Will these fall movies flop or succeed at the box office? First up is the Borderlands movie coming out this week, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna eat my own shoe if this is not a massive flop of a film. Borderlands games were very fun and popular, but the problem is that was about 10 years ago. I don't know how many people really care about this name value anymore at this point. It seems like their entire plan is just throw in a bunch of random celebrities that honestly have no business being in a movie together into this and just hope people go and see it for them. Plus, this movie has an estimated budget of around $100 million, and if you don't know, films need to make at least 2.5 to 3 times their budget to be profitable, so this thing has to make over $300 million worldwide. I don't think there's any way possible it has to be a flop. Next up is Beetlejuice, the long-awaited sequel to the first Beetlejuice movie. This time we're adding in some new cast members like Willem Dafoe and Jenna Ortega, with the classics coming back like Winona Ryder and Michael Keaton. Now, the first Beetlejuice made $74 million on a $15 million budget, and if you adjust for inflation, the numbers still aren't crazy, but obviously it was very profitable. But I think the real key is how much of a cult classic this film has become in the 30 years since it originally released. Because no, this movie doesn't have the online hype that we see around a lot of different films, but what this does have is the nostalgia factor. I feel like lots of older people that grew up with the original Beetlejuice that maybe never even go to the theaters are gonna go out to see this one. Plus, this movie running all throughout September and October, right around that spooky season, it's gonna really capitalize on that. I think this is gonna be a massive success. Venom: The Last Dance is a really interesting one because the first Venom movie was actually a massive success at the box office, making over $850 million at the box office worldwide, but then the sequel dropped down to $500 million, which I think is just simply a result of people realizing, hey, there's no Spider-Man in these Venom movies. The first one was completely fine, but there's no reason to rush out and see the second one, and I feel like the same drop-off is going to kind of happen for this third one. Now the budget's around $110 million, meaning it's going to have to make at least around $300 million to even break even, and I think this movie is going to put out one more trailer that's going to bait people in again and be like, oh, maybe there is a Spider-Man in this, and I think it's going to easily get to that $400 to $500 million range and become just barely profitable. Alien Romulus comes out in a couple weeks, and honestly, this one is one of the biggest toss-ups on the entire list, because while the Alien franchise is absolutely iconic and just one of those names that everybody knows even if they're not a movie fan, the last ones haven't been doing that great, and honestly, the Alien franchise has never really been pulling in amazing numbers at the box office. Rumors for the budget of the new Alien Romulus are that it's around $60 to $90 million, similar to Alien Covenant's numbers, which means it would have to make a pretty decent penny to break a profit again. I think this is going to heavily depend on the word of mouth of this movie. That's what we see a lot with horror films. If a lot of people are saying it's good, like Long Legs, over the long run, it does end up making a lot of money. Since this movie is coming out in early August, hopefully it stays in theaters for a long time, all throughout September and October, to get some of that Halloween horror movie money. But I think it can over time break even. I just don't think it's going to be absolutely massive. Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2 is one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I absolutely adore the first one. I just rewatched it the other day. It still holds up so great, and this movie is going to be absolutely massive, but it has one major problem, and that is that the budget of this film is reportedly between $250 and $310 million, meaning if it wants to break even, it's going to have to make somewhere in the $900 million range, most likely. Now, the original Gladiator is a classic. It made about $450 million, so it did pretty well back in the day, and this movie does have a lot of star power. We've got Pedro Pascal, Paul Mescal's up and coming, and we got Denzel Washington, a classic film star, to just balance out this cast. And I'm going to acknowledge there is fully a chance that this is just some creative Hollywood accounting where the budget is insanely high, but with expenses and all that stuff and maybe tax breaks, maybe it's actually lower than that insane number. But just going off the public facts that we know of this movie costing about $300 million, I'm gonna have to say it flops, because that is just way too much ground it has to make up, and there's a lot of competition in November, like Wicked, that comes out on the same exact day as Gladiator, which people are trying to say this is the new Barbenheimer. It's not going to be that, but this is definitely going to be its own interesting thing for the box office. Now, Wicked is obviously one of the most famous plays of all time, connected to one of the most famous movies of all time in The Wizard of Oz, so there is a huge audience for this movie. Plus, this thing's coming out right around the holiday season, releasing around Thanksgiving, and it's going to be running all through December, getting all those Christmas break dollars. I feel like everybody's predicting that this movie's going to make money, but I would not be surprised if it jumps into the top 5 or even 3 highest grossing movies of the entire year. People are really underestimating how huge the Wicked audience is, so I'm going to have to say a massive success for Wicked. Even a month ago, I was really out on Transformers 1, but I've kind of had a change of heart on how I think this movie is going to perform at the box office. Let me explain myself, because I still think this movie is going to have a really big uphill battle, because we know it's going to cost around $80 to $90 million. I think it's fair to assume that a lot of that money went to getting the big names that they got for the voice acting in this movie. Now, I have my own feelings about just getting celebrities to come do voice acting because a lot of times it doesn't work, but hopefully it does in this movie. The reason I was so down on this movie before is because I just straight up did not think it looked great in the trailer. I wasn't vibing with the animation and art style, but people have now seen early screenings of this and are calling it a really great family fun film. So this movie getting some really good word of mouth, plus being attached to the massive Transformers franchise, has kind of changed my thoughts. But again, that budget's pretty big, so it's gonna have to make around like $250-300 million to be profitable. And I think it's most realistic that this movie comes out right around that range worldwide. I don't think it's gonna be absolutely massive, but I do think it's gonna actually break even now. Coming out right around the same time is The Wild Robot with Lupita Nyong'o as the main voice, obviously based on the very famous book. And this looks super interesting to me. I just love the animation style, and I think there's a lot of love and care put into this movie. And we don't have any information on the budget of the film, assuming it's like a modest $50-70 million, a little bit cheaper than Transformers. I think this is actually going to be a really big hit. I know it sounds crazy to say this is going to be bigger than Transformers, but I feel like this is just a new, fresh franchise that's still based on a very popular existing book that's going to bring a lot of families to the theaters. I think it's going to be a success. Maybe I'll be completely wrong though. We got to talk about a little bit more horror movies since fall is the spooky season, and we have Terrifier 3 coming out this year. I cannot lie, I have not watched the first two Terrifier movies. They just don't interest me whatsoever. Terrifier 2 did make over $15 million on a budget of $2 million, and the budget for Terrifier 3 is reportedly around the same in that $2-3 million range. There's one thing we know about low budget horror movies: they are kind of just a cash cow. If you can make a horror movie for like anywhere between $1-5 million and get a sequel from it, you're gonna pretty much be guaranteed to be profitable. So this is gonna be a success just based on the numbers. We're getting a remake of The Crow, which is a cult classic movie, but I think they're kind of overestimating how many people really care about watching a new version of this film. And there's just so much competition, as I've already outlined, of just bigger name brands and movies, sequels, everything coming out. I feel like this movie's just gonna kind of get pushed to the side and really not have a great showing at all. I think it's gonna flop. Francis Ford Coppola's like massive self-financed Megalopolis comes out this fall, and honestly this movie seems doomed to fail, but I honestly don't think he cares. It's just a film he wanted to make. The people that have seen it early, the ratings distribution, as you can see below me, is just all over the place, from people rating this from 1 to 5 stars and everywhere in between. It's going to be an absolutely insane film. They were shopping this film around for a long time, trying to find one company to just please distribute this thing, and they finally did find one, but I feel like I have not seen a single trailer in front of any movie or anything for this. I think this is a movie that Francis Ford Coppola is okay with knowing is going to have its own very unique audience, and it's not going to be a huge box office success, so I'm going to have to say it flops. Who knows if it's going to be good or one of the worst things ever. We're getting Joker 2 adding Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, and we know this is going to be a musical. Reportedly, there's going to be over 15 different songs performed in this movie, which a lot of people are really turned off by. I'm honestly kind of all in, even though I'm not a musical fan. I feel like it's either going to be a train wreck or absolute cinema, but either way, I'm excited to see what they do with this. And we know that the first Joker movie did make over $1 billion at the box office. It was the first R-rated movie to reach that mark. While they're not necessarily hiding the fact this is a musical, they're not making it painfully obvious in the marketing like what Warner Brothers did when they had trailers for Wonka. So a lot of the general public isn't honestly gonna know, and I feel like they won't mind once they get into the theater and actually see it. One thing we can guarantee about this movie, whether it's gonna make the $1 billion or not that the first Joker movie did, this is gonna have a million couples dressing up as Joker and Harley Quinn again, just like the Suicide Squad movie when that came out originally in 2016. I think there is actually a decent chance this movie somehow outperforms the first, but if not, it's still going to be a massive success and make it at least like $700 million, so easy success.